So how will I notice a difference when 5G is up and running? I've got my 5G iPhone. How will I notice a difference?
Well, it'll be a lot faster. You'll have more capacity. You'll be able to stream movies. But it's more actually to do with what it's going to do in enabling not just people, but enabling businesses. Because these days, pretty much every single major business in the country relies on telecommunications. The banks have their ATMs connected. The mining industry has a lot of automation. And so it's all of that stuff as well.
I still fail to say, how's it going to touch me when I get in the car to come to work?
Well, it's going to be integrated with it. Enables your car to be integrated. The autonomous driving needs to be enabled by things like 5G.
Okay. And you do really see this as the fourth industrial revolution?
Absolutely. I think over the next 10 years, as the physical world becomes infused and connected with digital intelligence, that's what's going to transform industries. It's going to transform the services that we get every day from companies we do business with.
Okay, it's inevitable. The Ombudsman says half Australians, 60% of business, had problems in the last year, and it is getting worse. Why?
Well, it goes back, I think it's related to the same point. I think there's two issues here. One is that actually the connectivity and telecommunications has never been more important. We all depend so much more on it today than we ever did. 5 to 10 years ago, we were just making calls and sending SMSs. Now our smartphones are our online banking. We catch up with the news. We do our emails. And so the connectivity has become more important. And so customers have become much more attuned to the reliability and the performance of that. And then the second big issue is undoubtedly the migration to the NBN. And as people transition to the NBN, there are challenges and service experiences as they go through that process, and that's definitely accounting for a lot of the increase in concerns in the industry for customers.
You seemed in your speech to be suggesting that you're not doing well enough. Do you mean Telstra's not doing well enough, the NBN, or all of you?
Well, I think there is a whole of industry responsibility to do this, and there's things that Telstra can do better, but there's absolutely the case there's things that NBN need to do better as well. And if you look, Telstra used to provide all of these services, front to back, the whole system, and we still do for a reasonable proportion of the country. But as we migrate to the NBN, we now rely on the NBN, obviously, to do a lot of the work and to provide the technology. And as an industry, we haven't got that process right, and there's still too many hands off and too many parts of the system that break down, and that's what we've got to get right.
One of the overwhelming problems we get, or calls we get about problems with the NBN and the telcos, is there's a problem we don't know where to go to fix it. Now, what do we do about that? Is it not possible to have a central point that sorts that out?
Well, you have to go, and this is the issue, Neil, you have to go to your retail provider. So if it's Telstra, you have to go to Telstra. But the difference today is that Telstra can't necessarily fix it all because they're relying on the technology that's provided by NBN. So we then have to go back to NBN and ask them to fix whatever needs to be fixed. And it's in that process where it's increasing the complexity.
So I ring you and you ring NBN?
Correct.
That's a bit inefficient.
That's the system.
Can we change it?
Well, we've got this system by virtue of the policy of the creation of the NBN, and I don't think that's going back. So it's a system and that's why I say there's a responsibility of everybody in the system. I mean, there's some things that Telstra can absolutely do better, no doubt about it, and other RSPs, but we've also got to get NBN to basically, obviously, do their bit to make sure that the experience is as seamless as possible. And of course, in a world where we've got, probably somewhere in the order of 2 million customers connecting to the NBN this year alone, it obviously highlights those challenges.
But NBN's got to lift its game.
We've all got to lift our game, and certainly that includes NBN.
Will that happen? Will the game be lifted to a point that will go back to fewer complaints, fewer problems?
I'm confident that it will be, but that, Neil, at the same time is happening when the number of customers is migrating is increasing at the same time. So I think that the number of complaints per, if you like, number of people that are on the NBN will come down, but the number of people that are on the NBN is increasing at the same time. So I'm not sure that the noise is going to dial down for the short term.
How long?
Well, I think in the migration we're in our peak periods. In 2018, 2019 and 2020 will be the peak periods for connecting people to the NBN. And I believe that the underlying service is getting better and will continue to get better. And as also the number of people that have moved across and they're on the NBN, I think we will see that start to improve.
It's hindsight, but could we have done it better? Have we mucked it up?
Look, it's probably not for me to comment. It's a government policy in terms of the creation of the NBN. Telstra used to be the wholesale provider as well as the retail provider, and we've had many years of doing that, and we do that very, very well. the creation of the NBN means that that whole process needs to be relearned by a new organisation called NBN. And I think the important thing now is we focus on helping them get that right.
You're not going to go and run it, are you? They're looking for a new boss.
Not for me to do, Neil. I've got enough to do right now in my day job.
There's another issue with the cost of NBN, and this again leads to 5G. 5G isn't going to replace NBN, but it's going to eat away at its existence, isn't it? It's going to take some of the business away from NBN.
Yeah, no, look, I often get asked this question, will 5G basically make NBN redundant? And the simple answer to that is no. And the reason that's the case is that on our fixed broadband networks today, so people's NBN services at home, essentially, there are about 50 times as much traffic as goes over the mobile network. So if you wanted to put all of that traffic on the mobile network, you'd have to invest a lot of capital to provide that capacity. So it's not going to replace it completely. But it is true to say that with 5G, a significant proportion of customers may well choose to go to mobile only. Whether that's 10% or 40%, and I've heard numbers and I've seen numbers at both ends of that spectrum, is yet to be determined. And it's to be determined because some of the technology innovation still hasn't been solved for. But yeah, there is no doubt that more customers will go to mobile only through the migration to 5G.
But we've put $50 billion into this, and if it's 10% or it's 40%, it undermines the business model and costs us money, doesn't it?
Well, it's certainly an extra challenge for the NBN, for sure.
What are we going to sell it for? If we have 5G eroding to an extent, whether it be 40% of the business or 10% of the business, and we come along and say, look at this gee whiz thing, but yeah, 5G's nibbled away at it, surely we're not going to sell it for $50 billion, are we?
Well, look, I think that's a matter not a matter for me, that's a matter for the government. But I think what's important is ultimately that we get the model for NBN right. And at the moment, one of the challenges is that the wholesale price has more than doubled. And so therefore that's impacting the industry, and ultimately that is going to potentially push prices up for end consumers. Now, it's not happening at the moment because the retail providers, such as the Telstras of the world, have absorbed all of that, but to a point where nobody's making any money reselling it. So unless that issue is corrected at some point in the future, then it is going to basically incent more people to go to mobile.
But you're telling me that what's happening now will force up the price of what?
Of the wholesale price, which ultimately then leads to increase in the retail price of fixed broadband at home.
All right, so broadband prices will go up unless it's addressed.
Unless it's addressed, yes, in the long term.
And it's doubled the wholesale price.
The wholesale has doubled in the migration to the NBN, yes.
Will we be looking at a doubling of retail price?
Well, at the moment that's not been the case, but ultimately, if the NBN wholesale price stays high, and indeed is under the NBN plan is due to go higher, then that's only going to put pressure on the underlying retail price.
Why is it double? Why is it going higher? Why is the wholesale price going up?
Well, that's the NBN. That's essentially the NBN model and the NBN business plan.
Well, who sets that, though? Is it government?
Well, that's a combination. Essentially, it's a combination of government and NBN.
That's a monopoly organised. That's a rip-off. No comment.
No comment. No. Look, I think
I'm struggling with that. The government sets up an organisation we're paying for, and then charges us double what we were paying, and we're forcing up prices.
Yeah, look, I think in the end, what we've got to do as an industry with the government is support them to get the model right, both from a service perspective, so customers get a better service, to make sure they get the speeds that they need and deserve, and then also that it's affordable in the long term for consumers.
And the model's not yet right.
The model's not yet right.
How do we get it right?
Well, I think there's a number of things that can be done. As I say, the wholesale pricing needs to be looked at. We've talked about some of the things on the service side, and I think continuing to invest in the underlying technology will help improve speeds over the longer term as well.
Well, I've got the Prime Minister in the studio tomorrow, I think. He says he takes personal interest and responsibility for the NBN. It's his job to fix it. No comment again. Thank you very much.